Happy Monday, everybody. This is Don Blondahl, Hall of Fame veteran, sports cards and collectibles, coming to you with another pre-recorded baseball team history video series, the Seattle Pilots. Hopefully you guys are having a good start to your Monday. Let me get into our history lesson for today with the Seattle Pilots. I was hoping I could have showed some Seattle Pilot cards, but I could not find them at the moment. I know I've got them somewhere, but I couldn't locate them. So we're going to get into the history lesson. Okay, for the Seattle Pilots were an American professional baseball team based in Seattle, Washington during the 1969 Major League Baseball season. During their single season existence, the Pilots played their home games at Sick's Stadium and were a member of the West Division of Major League Baseball's American League. On April 1st, 1970, the franchise moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin and became the Milwaukee Brewers. The Pilots' name originated from the owner's part-time job as a harbor pilot and the city's association with the aviation industry. The team colors were royal blue and gold with accessory red in the logo, helm, and the baseball seams. Seattle had long been a hotbed for minor league baseball and was home to the Seattle Rainiers, a successful team in the Pacific Coast League. At the time, Seattle was the third biggest metropolitan area on the West Coast, and the Cleveland Indians briefly considered a move to Seattle in 1964, but opted to stay in Ohio. In 1967, Charles Finley looked to move his Kansas City Athletics to Seattle, but ended up moving the Athletics to Oakland, California. There was no real competition from other professional teams at the time. While Seattle had landed the National Basketball Association Supersonics in 1967, the NBA was not as popular as baseball was at the time. The NFL would come to the city in 1976 with the addition of the expansion Seahawks. The formation of the team. The lead man for the franchise ownership, Pacific Northwest Sports PNSI, was Dewey Soriano, a former Rainiers pitcher and general manager. The former president of the Pacific Coast League, in an ominous sign of things to come, Soriano had to ask William J.R. Daley, who owned the Indians during the time they flirted with moving to Seattle, to underwrite much of the purchase price. In return, Soriano sold Daley 47% of the stock, the largest stake in the club. He became chairman of the board while Soriano served as president. A couple of factors were beyond the Pilots' control. They were originally not set to start play until 1971, along with the Kansas City Royals. However, the date was moved up to 1969 under pressure from Senator Stuart Symington of Missouri. Professional baseball had been played in Kansas City in one form or another from 1883 until the A's left for Oakland after the 1967 season. And Symington would not accept the prospect of Kansas City having to wait 3 years for baseball's return. The American League would not allow only one new team to enter the league, as the resulting odd number of teams would unbalance the schedule. That meant that Kansas City and Seattle had to be admitted together. Also, the Pilots had to pay the PCL $1 million to compensate for the loss of one of its most successful franchises. After King County voters approved a bond for a domed stadium, what would become the Kingdome, in February 1968, with 62% in favor, the Seattle Pilots were officially born. California Angels executive Marvin Mikes, was hired as a general manager, and Joe Schultz, a coach to the National League champion St. Louis Cardinals, became manager. Team issues back in the day. Schultz and Mikes both optimistically predicted that the Pilots could finish in the newly formed 6-team American League West. However, the Pilots experienced typical struggles of a first-year expansion team. They won their first game and their home opener 3 days later, but only won 5 more times in the first month. Nevertheless, the Pilots managed to stay in a reasonable striking distance of 500, at least through June, and were only 6 games back of the division lead as late as June 28th, but a disastrous 9-20 July and an even worse 6-22 August ended even a faint hope of the kind of contention, though they were still in third place as late as August. The team finished the season in last place in the American League West with a record of 64-98, 33 games behind division winners Minnesota, and 45 games behind league-leading Baltimore. However, the team's poor play was the least of its troubles. The most obvious problem was Sick's Stadium, the longtime home of the Rainiers. It had once been considered one of the best ballparks in Major League Baseball. By the 1960s, however, it was considered far behind the times, while a condition of awarding the Pilots to Seattle was the Six had to be expanded to 30,000 seats. Only 19,500 seats were ready by opening day. Because of the numerous delays, the scoreboard was not even ready until the night before the season opener. By June, there was finally 25,000 seats in place. Water pressure was almost non-existent after the 7th inning, especially with crowds above 8,000. The Pilots had a total attendance of 677,944 people for the season, 20th in the 24-team league, and their average attendance per game, 8,268, was also 20th. Seattle finished above fellow cellar-dweller teams like the Cleveland Indians, the Chicago White Sox, Philadelphia Phillies, and the expansion San Diego Padres. The other 2 expansion teams outdrew the Pilots, with Kansas City Royals having 902,414 attend their games, while the Montreal Expos finished 10th in attendance with 1,212,608. The highest attendance for a Pilots home game was 23,657 on August 3rd against the New York Yankees. The lowest attendance for a Pilot game was on April 29th, their 17th game, when a reported 1,954 fans showed up to watch them play the California Angels. The Pilots lost several $100,000 their first and only season. The team's new stadium was slated to be built at the Seattle Center, but a petition by stadium opponents grounded the project to a halt. The project was later moved south of downtown and developed the Kingdome, since replaced by Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park. Relocation. By the end of the season, the Pilots were gasping. However, Daly refused to put up more financing. It was obvious that they would not survive long enough to move into their new park without new ownership. It was also obvious that such a move would have to happen quickly, as Sick's Stadium was inadequate even for temporary use. During the off-season, Soriano made contact with car salesman and former Milwaukee Braves minority owner Bud Selig, who was leading the effort to bring Major League Baseball back to Milwaukee. They met in secret over a month towards the end of the season. During Game 1 of the World Series, Soriano agreed to sell the Pilots to Selig for $10.8 million. Selig would then move the team to Milwaukee. However, the remaining owners of the Pilots turned it down in face of pressure from Washington State's two senators, Warren Magnuson and Henry M. Scoop Jackson, as well as State Attorney General Slade Gordon. Local theater chain owner Fred Dans came forward in October 1969 with $10 million deal, but realized when the Bank of California called a $4 million loan it had made to Soriano and Daly to finance the purchase of the franchise. In January 1970, Westin Hotels and Eddie Carlson put together a non-profit group to buy the team. However, the owners of the other major league teams rejected the idea almost out of hand, since it would have devalued the other club's worth. A slightly modified deal came sorry about that. Then they followed for bankruptcy. After a winter and spring full of court action, the Pilots reported spring training under new management, Dave Bristol. Unsure of where they would play, the owners had given tentative approval to the Milwaukee group, but the state of Washington got an injunction in March 16th to stop the deal. PNSI immediately filed for bankruptcy, a move intended to forestall post-sale legal action. At the bankruptcy hearing a week later, Milks testified there was not enough money to pay the coaches, players, and office staff. Had Milks been more than 10 days late in paying the players, they would have all become free agents and left Seattle without a team for the 1970 season. With this in mind, federal bankruptcy referee Sidney Blowen declared the Pilots bankrupt on April 1st, 6 days before opening day, clearing the way for them to move to Milwaukee. The team's equipment had been sitting in Provo, Utah, with drivers awaiting word on whether to drive towards Seattle or Milwaukee. The move came so late that Selig had to scrap his initial plans to change the team's colors to navy and red in honor of the minor league Brewers of his youth. Instead, the Brewers were stuck using old Pilots uniforms with the team name replaced. One legacy of the Brewers' roots in Seattle, and their colors are still blue and gold, although the shades have been darker since 2000. Ball 4. Jim Bouton was a Pilots relief pitcher through most of 1969, having been sold to the Seattle Angels by the New York Yankees in mid-1968. The classic baseball book, Ball 4, is based on a journal that Bouton kept during the season. Bouton spent much of the season with Seattle, although he was traded to the Houston Astros before the 1969 season ended. Lawsuit and enfranchisement of the Seattle Mariners. In 1970, the aftermath of the Pilots' purchase and relocation to Milwaukee, the city of Seattle, King County, and the state of Washington represented by then State Attorney General Slade Gordon, sued the American League for breach of contract. Confident that Major League Baseball would return to Seattle within a few years, King County built the multi-purpose Kingdome, which would become home to the NFL's expansion Seattle Seahawks in 1978. The Pilots' lawsuit continued in 1976. At trial, the American League offered to give Seattle an expansion-based franchise in return for dropping the suit, and the details were ironed out over the next year. To keep the league with an even number of teams, a formal expansion proceeding was held, with a second team, the Blue Jays, being awarded to the city of Toronto, also allowing both leagues to place a team in Canada. The National League's Montreal Expos having been established in 1969, and the new Seattle team began to play in 1977. So it would be owned by entertainer Danny Kaye, along with Stanley Golub, Walter Schoenfield, Lester Smith, Jim Stillwell Jr., and James A. Walsh. Seattle's new team would be known as the Mariners and would initially incorporate the same blue and gold colors used by the Pilots. So the list of Seattle Pilots seasons. Of course, right now they were only in one season. That was 1969 with 84 wins, 98 losses, 395, sixth overall in the club's playoffs, and notes as well. So there you have it. Their 1969 season, they went 64, 98, 395, sixth in the American League West. And then the only season in Seattle until they became the Seattle Mariners in 1977. And from that point to present day, I've got most of the team sets for the Seattle Mariners. So there's our little history of the Seattle Pilots becoming the Milwaukee Brewers. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoy this short video. Sorry I didn't have more. Sorry if I seem to have lost my spot once or twice there. I apologize for that. I am tired. I do need to take a shower, go to bed, and get up early in the morning, 4 o'clock, 4:30, to get ready to go to work again tomorrow. And then I'm going away for the weekend. Me and my wife, it's our anniversary this weekend. 33 years, so we're going to get out of town for 2 nights. And then we'll come back Monday. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll have my regular videos that I'll post up. All right. And then we will see you then. So this is, let me turn the cameras around. Tell you a quick goodbye on my normal sign-off routine. All right. So this, I'm sorry I'm not wearing a jersey tonight. I'm wearing my ball cap though. One of the older Seattle Mariners caps. So this is Don Blondahl, Hall of Fame veteran sports cards and collectibles, having come to you with this Monday edition of Baseball Team History video series highlighting the Seattle Pilots this time around. Okay, so we'll see you guys on Tuesday for my next live stream. Until then, you guys have a wonderful and blessed weekend, and hopefully I'll see you around the channel sometime this weekend, okay? Take care, everybody, and have a great upcoming weekend. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving with your families, and we'll take care, all right? Love you all, and thank you for all your support you give me. Bye now.